Thank you very much, Greg, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, and a special welcome to Joe and Emily, both very experienced integrity systems managers, but also very experienced at practical application of the integrity system with livestock in previous roles or current roles that they might have on farm as well. So thanks everybody for joining us. Just the agenda for today's session. So what we're going to go through is the role of the Integrity Systems Company, who we are and what we do. What is the red meat integrity system and why it's important. Then we'll touch on the integrity system programs, so Livestock Production Assurance and the National Livestock Identification System. We'll go through some changes that have been made to the national vendor declarations over the last couple of months and introduce you to, if you're not already using or familiar with, the faster, easier eNVD platform. And then we'll also show you a couple of handy integrity insights throughout the presentation, but also show you a good way that you can bring all your integrity accounts into one place using MyMLA. So just to start off with, Integrity Systems Company, for those of you that may not have heard of us or may not be familiar with what we do, we are a subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia, which is a service provider to industry. And Integrity Systems Company, also a service provider, but we manage programs on behalf of the red meat industry. Now, the organisations in the top row there, they're often referred to as peak industry councils, and they are focused on policy and strategy. So they advocate on behalf of producers to decision makers and those service providers on producers' behalves. Now, everybody there within that diagram, they all have different roles and different responsibilities, but we all work together to support the industry and to secure a profitable and sustainable future. So Meat and Livestock Australia, we are a research, development and adoption and also responsible for marketing on behalf of the red meat sector. We do that by collaborating with the Australian government and the wider red meat industry, and we do that through investing in initiatives that contribute to producer profitability, sustainability and global competitiveness. So we're known as a research and development corporation. There's a number of those for all the various sectors in agriculture in Australia. And the way that we do that is that every time sheep, cattle and goats are sold or a transaction levy is paid, that levy is then matched with Australian government dollars up to a certain point, and then they're invested in either research, development and adoption activities or marketing activities. So Integrity Systems Company, as I said before, we are a fully owned subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia, and we manage and deliver Australia's red meat integrity system. Now, this system underpins consumer confidence in on-farm production of Australian red meat and covers two key elements, and they are on-farm assurance through the Livestock Production Assurance Program, or LPA, and then the identification and traceability component to the system, and that's through the National Livestock Identification System. ISC works collaboratively with government and industry to deliver these world-leading traceability and assurance programs, and these are the foundations of Australia's red meat integrity system. So that red meat integrity system, it ensures that red meat is safe to eat and fully traceable. It provides on-farm assurance, animal identification and traceability from paddock to plate, and it underpins the Australian livestock selling system, giving confidence to buyers, retailers and consumers. Now, just to put all of that into context as to why it's so important that we have a red meat integrity system, it's the confidence that consumers have in our product, and it's based on traceability through the supply chain, which provides accountability right back to the farm where animals were raised, and production to an assessed standard. So as a first world country, we often take it for granted in Australia that our food is produced safely and ethically, and this is absolutely not the case in every country around the world. So, and when you are selling food to international markets, and the majority of our red meat does go overseas, transparent, rigorous production systems that require audited record keeping on farm are really essential. Our international buyers and customers and consumers require that these systems are in place. And these just highlight why the red meat integrity system is so important, because It protects our industry prosperity, our market access and our advantage, and that's linked to our reputation for providing safe and high quality food. It supports premium prices and positive overseas perceptions of our product, and it also ensures that our reputation as a supplier of clean and green produce is maintained. Now, while there are multiple producers and many properties that produce livestock across Australia, the integrity system really is about delivering one measure of quality through one integrity system. And the important thing to note here is that we absolutely have, all of us, regardless of the role that we play, either as livestock producers or livestock agents, transporters, processors, we've all got a role to play to ensure that the whole industry can stand by what we sell. So I realise we've probably got varying levels of experience on the webinar, so just as a quick refresher, we will provide a bit more detail on the two programs that work together to underpin our industry's food safety and traceability on farm. So as I said before, there's two, I guess, core elements. There's the on-farm assurance component, and that's through the Livestock Production Assurance program, and then there's the identification and traceability element, and that is through the National Livestock Identification System. So LPA, it's all about on-farm assurance, and that covers on-farm management of food safety, animal welfare and biosecurity risks. It's the tick of assurance for your product from producer through to consumer, and it demonstrates professionalism of the industry and underpins market access for Australian red meat. The NLIS, on the other hand, is all about identification and traceability. It tracks the location of every animal throughout its life. It's mandatory for producers and endorsed by major producer, feedlot agent, sale yard and processors. It's underpinned by state and territory legislation and enhances Australia's ability to track livestock during disease and food safety incidents. Some of those we had on the slide before, so things like foot and mouth disease, African swine flu and the like, which can really pose a significant threat to the industry. Now, there are three other elements which make up the red meat integrity system, and they are the Property Identification Code, or the PIC, the LPA National Vendor Declaration, and then really thorough record keeping for both LPA and NLIS. Now, the PIC is a central component of two programs. It's required for registration with both LPA and NLIS. The PICs are managed independently by the relevant state and territory Department of Agriculture, and incorporation into LPA and NLIS is the only way that traceability and food safety can really be managed at a national level. And as I said earlier, that we are a very export dominated industry, so it's really important that the assurance of a strong and effective national system exists. So each of those programs, just in a little bit more detail, so what does it actually mean on farm? So for LPA accredited producers, you commit to carrying out on-farm practices that support the integrity of the entire system. And this is then verified when producers sign the LPA National Vendor Declaration for any livestock movement. Now, there's 7 elements which make up the Livestock Production Assurance program, and as a producer, you undertake to manage your property and your livestock according to these 7 different elements. And they are the property risk assessment, safe and responsible animal treatments, stock foods, fodder crops, grain and pasture treatments, preparation for dispatch of livestock, livestock transactions and movements, biosecurity and animal welfare. So from an NLIS point of view, what does that actually mean on farm? Well, NLIS combines 3 core elements to enable the lifetime traceability of animals. The first of those is that all livestock are identified by a visual or an electronic ear tag or device. The second is that all physical locations are identified by means of this Property Identification Code, or the PIC. And the third is that all livestock location data and movements are recorded in a central database, and that is the NLIS database. And then, of course, when when animals are transferred between PICs, that's when both the LPA and the NLIS come together through LPA National Vendor Declarations. So the NVD brings together all on-farm assurance, identification and traceability details. It's the basis for ensuring a safe and traceable food product. Now, the NVD captures all the food safety information on every animal every time it moves from property to property to a processor or to a sale yard. And the NVD also provides the evidence of the livestock history and the on-farm practices. So all those elements within the LPA program when transferring livestock through the value chain. Now, there have been a number of changes to the NVD over the course of 2020. There's three core changes really, and the first is that there's been changes to the NVD versions for all species. We have released the new eNVD system and also the decommissioning of the eDEC platform. So a review of all the NVD versions by SafeMeat in 2019 recommended that a number of changes be made, resulting in the development of updated versions of all those LPA NVDs. Now, these changes, along with the rollout of the new NVD, collectively provide an easier, more efficient and cost-effective system for producers and stakeholders to interact with the integrity system. And the suite of changes aligns with the industry goal of ensuring that the integrity system of the future is not only simple to use, but is valued by industry and trusted by consumers. So in terms of the new versions of the NVDs, they all became available from the 1st of July this year, and they're identified by version number 0720, and you can see that's an image there of the hard copy versions, and you can see where that 0720 is located at the top of the form. So if you're ever wondering which version of the form you're using, you can go and look for that number at the top there. Now, current or the previous versions of the NVDs will continue to be accepted up until the 31st of December this year. However, from the 1st of January 2021, only these updated versions, so version 0720 of all NVDs, will be accepted for all species. And just a point to note there that under MLA's Accelerated Adoption Initiative, there's currently no cost for hard copy versions of the NVD until the 30th of June 2021. So what's changed on these new updated NVDs? Well, the first change is that there is now the inclusion of a destination pick. Now that's mandatory in WA and Tasmania, but it's optional for other states. And we're certainly encouraging producers that are not in WA and Tasmania to include the destination pick on the NVD, because it will certainly help with managing your NLIS transfers when it comes to entering that information. We've got a couple of integrity insights there included on these slides as we go through. We're often asked, how do you actually find the destination pick? You certainly can ask your agent or the buyer before you're loading at the yard, so you can make sure that you fill out your NVD beforehand. You can search in the NLIS database, or if you're using the eNVD, you can use the search function there, which is really quite easy to use now and quite sophisticated, and will bring up a good list of results for you. Just a point to note there is around the consignee and the destination details. Now, quite often these can be different. So if, for example, you're sending animals into a sale yard, then the consignee would be your livestock agent. However, the destination details or the destination pick would be that of the actual sale yard itself. Another change there is the removal of the agent's declaration section, so Part C. And I'm not sure if we've got, we might have a couple of sheep producers on the line, or mixed producers from Queensland in particular. Another change is to the sheep NVD, where we now have inclusion of the number of EID devices that are included in the consignment as well. So that obviously is to cater for the changes that have been brought in Victoria in particular with mandatory EID use. However, we are seeing EID being used increasingly in other states. So on the sheep NVD, you'll notice that there's now the number of EID devices included in the consignment as a question. In terms of the eDEC, as I mentioned, the eDEC's being decommissioned over the course of the remainder of this year. What that actually looks like is that from the 30th of April this year, you're no longer actually able to purchase any eDEC tokens. However, between the 30th of April and the 31st of December this year, tokens that were previously purchased can continue to be used. However, from the 31st of December this year, access to the eDEC will cease. Now, the new eNVD covers all the information that the eDEC does, but certainly in a much more user-friendly and useful way. And by running a single digital system, that presents a significant cost and time saving for the industry as well. So that's the, I guess, the changes that have been rolled out and a description of the red meat integrity system. So I hope you've got a bit of a clearer understanding now of how the NLIS and the LPA work together to make up that integrity system, which underpins, I guess, our market access and access to premium prices and protection of our reputation overseas, which has been earned over many years, but also will be called on in an exotic animal disease outbreak or a residue situation, for example. Now, I guess just as the ISC at the moment is working with a range of industry influencers and partners and producers right across Australia to build awareness, knowledge and skills in LPA and NLIS, because we want to help industry to stand by what it sells, regardless of the role that you might play in industry. And so part of our strategy is to communicate practical tips on how producers can meet their requirements as part of Australia's red meat integrity system. So for the remainder of the session, I'm really going to give you some practical insights and tips in terms of how you can actually meet your requirements for the system going forward. So as I said earlier, the red meat integrity system, it's all connected. There are, I guess, two underlying elements or underpinning elements to the system, and they are on-farm assurance through the Livestock Production Assurance program, or identification and traceability of all livestock, and that's through the National Livestock Identification System. And then there are 3 points at which both these programs intersect within the system, and that is through the property identification codes, through national vendor declarations, and also through thorough record keeping. So as producers, what can you do, or what do you need to do to make sure that as part of livestock production assurance that you're meeting your requirements? Well, you need to keep your online LPA account details up to date. You need to maintain your LPA accreditation, and this includes doing the online learning and assessment to understand the LPA requirements for livestock and property management, according to those 7 different elements that I talked through before, and renewing your accreditation every 3 years. Now, LPA accreditation gives you more options for marketing your livestock and means that you can access LPA national vendor declarations for all livestock movement between PICs. You also need to manage your livestock and property in line with the 7 LPA on-farm requirements. Maintain thorough records as evidence of livestock history and on-farm practices, and also be prepared to undergo an audit if requested. So LPA is an audited accreditation. So as a livestock producer, you agree to complete an audit when asked. And this provides that accountability from paddock to plate, which our customers and consumers require of us. So for the National Livestock Identification System, or NLIS, as producers, you need to keep your online NLIS account details up to date. Order and use NLIS tags as identifiers for every animal on your PIC. The required tag types differ a bit between the states and territories, but every animal must be tagged with an accredited NLIS device and can't be moved to another PIC without one, including to another farm, feed lot, sale yard or processor. You need to record movements of livestock in the NLIS database. The livestock transfers between PICs must be recorded by transferring the tags in the NLIS database. And the person receiving the livestock is responsible for completing the transfer or checking that it's been done if you've had that agreement or service provided by your agent or sale yard, for example. Now, the time frames for property to property transfers vary, so it's always a good idea to check what is required with your state. Now, all producers need to regularly check their own records against the database to ensure that transfers have been completed. And this is particularly important if you're relying on someone else to make the transfer. And it's also recommended that you do a PIC reconciliation every year to ensure that the NLIS database is an accurate record of the devices and the livestock on your property. And to ensure livestock traceability, the database sometimes issues automated emails when differences occur, and it's important that you investigate those differences if you are notified. So what that looks like is if you sell animals and you've got something that hasn't got a tag, or if you've got an animal that you said was going from your PIC to the sale yards on your NVD, but then that animal wasn't appearing as on your PIC when a transfer was triggered, then you'll get a warning email. So it's really important that you check those warning emails when you receive them. And producers need to remember that completing the transfers on the database is an auditable requirement of LPA, and auditors will review not only the transfers, but also your copies of your NVDs or your eNVDs. So talking about NVDs, what do producers need to do? You need to maintain your LPA accreditation to continue to be able to access LPA NVDs. NVDs are a legal document and they are your declaration that you have met the requirements of the LPA program. This declaration is then married to the livestock's lifetime traceability when the transfer is completed on the database. Assurance and traceability need to go hand in hand so that our customers can remain confident in the integrity of our system. And when you tick boxes or answer questions on the LPA NVD, you're declaring that your on-farm practices meet LPA requirements and therefore our customers' expectations. A tick on an NVD must be backed up by accurate farm records. This is your pledge that the meat from your farm has been produced safely, ethically, and meets biosecurity requirements. And it means that you stand by what you sell. And it's really important that we all do realise that as livestock producers, we are also meat or food producers. We're not just livestock producers. So at some point, these animals are going to end up in the food chain. So food safety is very, very important. You also need to file your completed NVDs in case of an audit. And as I said before, NLIS transfers are part of LPA audits because consumer confidence in the system relies on assurance and traceability being linked. So make sure you complete your NVDs properly and make sure that the transfer on the NLIS is done, referencing the NVD serial number so that you're doing your part in keeping the system strong. Now, in terms of NVDs and filling them in, the biggest tip to stand by what you sell is to fill in every LPA NVD correctly. The aim is to make sure that every NVD is clear, correct, and complete. So we've got some handy tips here. This image, which I realise is quite busy on the screen, there's a whole page of tips in the LPA NVD booklet on how to fill out the NVD. We're just going to focus on some of the key areas where we know that producers have a little bit of trouble or there might be some confusion from time to time. However, you will start to see this image more and more on signage and the like as well. So in terms of the NVD, the questions in Part A of the NVD declaration, they're often the questions where producers need a bit of a hand. So these questions are all about the animal's history. This information is crucial for food safety and market access. So the key here is to stay on the safe side and if in doubt, tick yes. On the cattle NVD, you must declare if animals have ever been treated with HGPs in their lifetime. An increasing number of markets will not accept beef or beef products that are treated with HGPs. So answering this question correctly is vital to protecting Australia's access to those markets. If in doubt, tick yes, and remember that no cattle for the EU market can be treated with HGPs. And just a bit of an insight there from the LPA learning, don't forget that cattle treated with HGPs must be identified with a triangular ear punch. So if you've purchased cattle or if you're selling cattle and they've got that triangular ear punch, you know that they've been treated with HGPs and you can answer accordingly. Question 3 on the NVD is around animal ownership. So if you've bred the livestock, you need to tick yes to this question. However, if you purchased one or more animals within the consignment, then you need to tick no, and then you need to indicate the most recent date of purchase. So the really important thing here is, though, that you can't tick yes and no, even if you've got a mixed consignment of animals. And you can't tick a number of answers depending on the date of purchase if you've got a mixed consignment as well. With chemical or veterinary treatments, withholding periods or feed treatments, it's really important that you declare the risk, that for all questions you tick yes or no, not both, and that again you check your records to be sure. You need to check your records to make sure that all animals have not been fed any restricted animal material or RAM, and RAM products include meat and offal, animal fats, blood, meat, bone or blood meals. When it comes to veterinary or chemical treatments of the actual livestock, you need to check whether the livestock are still within a withholding period or an export slaughter interval, and you need to complete those details accurately on the NVD. For more information, you can always check the drum of the chemical that you may have been using, or you can visit the APVMA website for a listing of export slaughter intervals. And just a little note there, withholding periods and export slaughter intervals are not necessarily the same. So some of our export markets might require a different length of time. So it's always important that you check those on the product that you've been using. In terms of feed that the animals might have consumed and whether or not that material has been treated with anything, you need to check your records to see if the livestock have consumed any material that might still be within a withholding period, and make sure that you fill out that NVD question accurately as well. Now, the final step for Part A is the declaration. So this is your declaration and guarantee that you've met the LPA requirements, so that the NVD is therefore complete and correct, and that the animals have not had access to any restricted animal material. So don't forget that the LPA NVDs are a legal document and a part of your LPA record keeping, and also can be audited. And then Part B of the NVD is the bit that needs to be completed by the livestock carrier. The tip here is to make sure that you don't let the truckie leave without filling out this section, because you won't have that signed declaration on your copy of the NVD as well. Now, I saw before that we didn't have anybody specifically from the NT on the call, but just in case somebody has joined since we had our little poll there at the start, but LPA NVDs are not currently a government legislative requirement in the Northern Territory. A NT waybill is required for cattle movements off a property in the NT, and an NT health certificate waybill is required for all movements into the NT from interstate. So an NVD does not replace the waybill or the health certificate waybill. And as part of the Livestock Act review, the NT government will be consulting with the Northern Territory cattle industry through the NTCA and other stakeholders during 2020 on the industry position to maintain NT waybills or to transition to legislated LPA NVDs, with any additional information required for movements provided in an attachment to the LPA NVD. So that's just some information there that is unique to the NVD in terms of animal movements. Now, just before we go off the NVD section, just again a note around mixed consignments. So you can divide the animals into groups based on their history, and therefore you can do more than one national vendor declaration, even if they're on the same truck, for example, as long as you can identify and separate them at the other end, so either at the sale yard or at the processing plant. However, if you cannot identify and separate them, then you need to complete one NVD for the movement. That NVD then needs to reflect accurately the ownership details of those animals, as well as the length of time if they've been purchased. So you might have a group that's made up of 5 or 6 different types of animals, or animals that you've had for different lengths of time. You need to pick the most recent date of purchase and declare that on the NVD, and that will cover the risk of any animals that you've owned for a longer period of time. So now we go on to, if you would like to, and I'd certainly encourage you all to start moving to the new eNVD system. So the new mobile-friendly, user-centric eNVD system was developed based on feedback that ISC has been capturing since the initial launch of the eNVD back in 2017 as the first alternative to paper NVD books. Now, the faster eNVD system is available to all LPA accredited producers, feedlots and value chain stakeholders. It's more accurate than paper forms and ensures that the latest versions of the NVD are being used and meet market requirements. It reduces time and duplication spent completing livestock assurance and health declarations, because you can nominate the different types of forms that you would like completed and then only enter that information once, and it will populate those forms for you. It reduces the cost of storing and retrieving historical consignments for auditing and reporting and administrative purposes. And also, you don't need to wait for new NVD books to arrive. And stakeholders in the supply chain can log in and view their consignments, including receivers of stock. The eNVD, as I said, is not just a national vendor declaration. It's a system for completing all your consignment paperwork digitally, including livestock assurance and health declarations. And you can access the new eNVD system by logging in to the LPA Service Centre or access it through the Integrity Systems Company website, and you'll just need your LPA credentials, which is your PIC, your LPA user ID and password to start creating consignments within the eNVD. Why is this version better? We've undertaken some extensive consultation with supply chain stakeholders. It's undergone rigorous testing, including by producers and the feedlot sector. There's printed any time capability now, even with incomplete consignments. There's unlimited space for livestock descriptions. You can draw your signature or brand using a touchscreen device, so with your finger or a mouse. And new features and enhancements are being routinely released in response to feedback that we receive. In particular around the eNVD and its capability offline. The eNVD application as it is now has been designed for the best user experience possible, and this only represents the first phase of our enhancement plan for the system. So the next step for us is conquering this connectivity issue. So in the next 6 months, ISC is undertaking significant research to develop to develop this offline capability so that the eNVD is then available to all producers. Now, this might mean a range of solutions, including but not limited to things such as a native mobile app, Bluetooth transfer of information between devices, for example, SMS and email notifications. So the message here is watch this space. All enhancements for offline capability will be shared on the What's New web page, but yes, we're certainly aware of some of the challenges around connectivity, and it's not unique to remote and regional areas. I'm sort of only an hour from Canberra and we struggle here with mobile reception. So absolutely our next challenge is around the connectivity issue and being able to make the eNVD available offline. So ISC, there's an integrity insight there. We're continually updating the eNVD platform to ensure that it meets customers' experiences, customers' expectations and is a good experience. Our updates are listed on the Integrity Systems Company website, but we welcome feedback and would encourage you to reach out if you do have feedback about using the eNVD. So now for the remainder of the session, just a couple of integrity insights for you. So for each of the different programs or elements of the system. So for the NVD, for example, tips for filling it out on the go. Fill out as much as you can before going to the yards. Don't get caught short. Order your new book early or start using the eNVD. Always keep your LPA records up to date so that the information that you enter or that you need to enter is ready to go and at your fingertips. Always file the National Vendor Deck, keep a copy as part of your records, and check the NLIS database to ensure that transfers have occurred. In terms of the NLIS database, and if you need to check the database, do transfers, do a PIC reconciliation, we do have a whole range of tips. If you need help navigating the database or you're new at doing transfers and the like, so I'd encourage you to check out those tech tips. We're also in the process of turning those tech tips into some really intuitive how-to guides. Now, an integrity insight there is to check the NLIS database whenever transfers have been completed to ensure that the numbers are correct, because it can save a lot of time rather than correcting mistakes later on. In terms of LPA, we've talked a lot today about keeping good and thorough records. Well, it's really easy and a good idea to align that record keeping to the 7 LPA requirements. Now, on the ISC website, we've got some templates and some handy checklists to help you do this. You can download the free templates from the website simply by searching for LPA record keeping. And these include all the details that must be recorded as part of the LPA program. And you can order a free printed copy before the 30th of June 2021 by calling the help desk, or you can visit the LPA learning section of the Integrity Systems website, or you can access it through the LPA Service Centre as well. A few more tips on record keeping. It's really important that you've got some practical tips here to make sure that you're gathering the information that's required. There's no perfect formula. There are plenty of decision support tools and farm management apps that you can use. There's nothing wrong with using a spreadsheet. There's also nothing wrong with using LPA templates, or you can use and continue to file your hard copy records as well. But just a couple of ideas to make life a little bit easier for you. You can ask your supplier to add the ag chem or the vet product batch number and expiry date to the invoice for your livestock treatment records. I'd encourage you to use your phone. We've all got smartphones now. Take photos of any information around the farm. Any photos that you do take, a date and time stamped. So from an audit point of view, you can certainly go back and access those records. And they'll fit in with your auditing and your record keeping requirements. And also when you're purchasing fodder, so hay or grain, it's really important to download a copy of the commodity vendor deck and ask the supplier to fill it in. So CVDs only, or the commodity vendor deck, sorry, they only cover food safety requirements. They don't necessarily cover information about weeds and things like that, but it's all related to the application of chemicals to the crop that was used to produce the fodder, for example. So most producers should be happy to supply you with that information, because of course if you're then selling animals and you need that information for the NVD, or if you're audited, you'll be able to have it on hand. We very often get asked what's involved in an LPA audit, and audits could be a whole webinar in themselves, and happy to provide more information, or if that's something you're interested in, we can certainly do that. But I guess the messages for an auditor: don't panic, that audits are all about identifying areas for practical on-farm improvement. Your LPA records will be reviewed by an auditor, so it's important to make sure that they're accurate and up to date, but that the auditors will also give you tips along the way. So did you know, for example, that you need a copy of the Australian Animal Welfare Standards and Guidelines on hand for your LPA audit? You can download it and save it on your computer. You don't necessarily need to print off a hard copy. It is quite a wordy document, but you do need to make sure that all your team members know where it is and can access it. You also need to have completed the animal welfare certificate from the LPA learning modules as part of your LPA accreditation. So where can you go for more information? Integrity Systems produced a new website in November last year. It's a bit of a one-stop shop, or a portal for all your integrity information that you might need. We have a monthly email newsletter called Integrity Matters. If you're not receiving that and you would like to be added to the mailing list, then please reach out and let us know. Alternatively, you can subscribe on the website, but that has all the latest news and tips from Integrity Systems Company each month. We're on all the usual social media channels as well: Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. However, conscious that not everybody loves online, and that people still do like to see hard copy or face-to-face activities. Obviously, face-to-face is a little bit limited at the moment due to COVID restrictions, but we do have a range of tools and resources that you can use. So there's videos available on our YouTube channel, particularly around how to fill in an NVD, how to start using the eNVD, an overview of the integrity system and how it all works together. There's LPA learning, there's FAQs, there's fact sheets available in hard copy as well. And as I said, all those record keeping templates. And if you really are stuck, you're more than welcome to reach out to the Integrity Systems Company help desk, and the number's there on your screen, and we'll circulate that to everybody following today's session. And just before I finish up, conscious of the time, and if people have some questions, but I would encourage everybody to sign up to MyMLA if you haven't already. MyMLA is a customised online dashboard that is, I guess, tailored to you, tailored to your production system, your location. It will give you a customised 7-day weather forecast, information from the MLA prices and markets team based on your farming system and location, information on nearby events, and any news and information from MLA and other sources, and then links to research and tools. But the real value for me in my MLA is the ability to link all your integrity and industry accounts in one place, and then you'll only need one user ID and one password. So it delivers that personalised, applicable content just for you, but also means that you've got your LPA, NLIS, MSA, livestock data link if you're using it, accounts all in one place. So it makes it a lot easier for you because you don't have to remember 18 different passwords on top of all the other passwords that fill up our lives on a daily basis now that we do everything online anyway. So I'd encourage you all to sign up to my MLA, and you can do that through the both the MLA or the Integrity Systems Company website. So that's just about it for me, but just a reminder that the NVD is a declaration. It is your declaration as a producer of the livestock. We can't do it for you. Your livestock agent can't do it for you, but we absolutely are here to help. And hopefully today, through this, we've been able to provide some information, some handy tips on how to get your NVD right, or if not, you'll know where to go if you need more information going forward. But Greg, that's it from me. Thank you very much. Now happy to take any questions. And just a reminder, we've also got Joe and Em on the call as well that can help with any specific questions. But that's it from me. Thank you.